Hi, and thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much to A Plus for facilitating this evening. Our topic tonight is about teens. I have been working with teens for 13 years, and I have watched many teens struggle with social dilemmas. I therefore have found 7 skills that have been very, very helpful in guiding teens through this struggle, and I wanted to share it with you tonight. But first, before we go into that, I wanted to talk about what's going on with the teen. Let's understand what's going on a brain level, on a body level. Let's understand what the developmental task is for that age. What are they trying to do? What do they have to achieve in that time period? So what we now know, what research tells us today, is that there's substantial brain growth and structural changes going on in a teen's brain. They used to think that at the point where somebody was a teenager, they didn't continue having major brain growth. But now they know that there is substantial brain growth that is not completed until adolescence is over, which sometimes causes your child to have what I call short circuits. Short circuits are, imagine that your child's brain is under construction and their brain is maturing at extreme speed, and you're going to sometimes see those short circuits because it hasn't completed its task. Short circuits look like in your life like a lot of moodiness, sometimes intense behavior, sometimes aggression, sometimes risk taking. Along with the brain being under major construction, we have the body being under major construction. We have the physical maturation of the body, and we also have the hormones that come along with that. At the same time, this is the humor of the situation. At the same time, the child's task ahead of them when they're moving from childhood to adolescence is to become independent, to move from dependence on the mom and the dad or the caregiver and move towards independence. So what happens is the child is stuck between two worlds. They're still attached and holding on to their parents, but yet they have this great need sometimes to separate and push them away. And they don't really know which world they find themselves in. Sometimes they find themselves in the world of a child, and sometimes they find themselves in the world of an adult. Remember, these are two totally different worlds with two totally different fears, sets of rules, and all different things that a child would need to navigate it. And often they find themselves in the child world, and then I need mom. But then a second later, they're in the adult world, and then all of a sudden, they feel like I need to be independent. That brings us to our topic tonight, which is the importance of peer relationships. Suddenly, the peer relationships become at the front burner. They become center stage. All of a sudden, their peers are going to symbolize moving towards independence. Their peers are symbolizing the outside world. And now, of course, their peers know way more than you or than you ever did. But remember, your voice is in their heads. Your voice is in their heads, and your values and your ethics and the things that you've tried to give over to them is in your heads. Keeping this in mind, we are going to focus on keeping in mind that there's so many difficulties that the teen is going through. We are going to focus on 7 skills that I have found helpful. My goal is not to give you a comprehensive view of these skills because I would be unable to in an hour. My goal is to touch upon these 7 skills that I think will be helpful to you in understanding how to begin talking to your teens about some of the stress that they experience in their social dynamics. Feel free to look at my slide on further reading where you may read more about some of these topics. Feel free to ask for professional guidance when your teen might be going through an issue. It doesn't have to be a crisis. It can be a simple issue of just adolescence. Adolescence is difficult. Adolescence is complex. So feel free to know that we're touching upon these skills, but at the same time, they will need further exploration from you. Now, as we go into these skills, we have to keep in mind that many of you will say, but what should I do, Brachi? They don't want to talk to me. They come home from school, I say, how was your day? And their answers are fine, good. They don't want to elaborate. So don't fear. I'm going to help you if you can talk to your teen, and hopefully you can. But I'm also going to help you if you feel that your teen doesn't constantly want you talking to her. And I'm going to tell you that it is equally effective for you to be modeling these skills yourself in order to to help your child understand, your teen understand what are the skills that are going to help them be more successful now and be more successful in their future, because these are some of the basic skills they need in order to be successful in adult relationships. So if your daughter is not interested in talking, if I could figure out how to do this, I just press enter. Do you know? How do I press enter to get to my next slide? I bet all of our daughters could help us with this. Technical things. But where am I clicking?
Oh, because you don't know how to click on this. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you just like
Push it down?
Push it down.
Okay.
But it's like a right.
So we went over this one
right
already.
side.
Tweens and teens, their brain under construction, the body under construction. Am I a child or an adult? The importance of peer relationships become really, really, really at the front burner. I'm trying to turn to my next slide. There we go. If she's not interested in talking, model it. Here you have somebody modeling a mother and daughter elephant. She's not interested in talking, don't fear. Just model the skill instead of thinking that you have to talk directly with your daughter. So we're going to start with our first very basic skill. Our first skill is emotional awareness. Before we could begin anything, we need our teen to understand what she's feeling. We need her to do 3 things when it comes to feeling, just to begin with, to have a very basic understanding of emotional awareness. We need her to know her feelings, we need her to express her feelings, and we need her to accept her feelings. This is not easy at all. I have teens coming into my office all the time. They come in saying, I'm furious, I'm so angry. And when we break down these emotions, we see that, wow, you're not angry, you were hurt, you're embarrassed, you're lonely. Why is it helpful for us to break down these emotions? If we can break down these emotions and see what we're actually feeling, we can best respond to our emotions. If we're just confused and think we're just angry, then we won't know how to best respond. If we're hurt, lonely, and angry, hurt, lonely, and sad, we can tend to those emotions in a much more effective way. Expressing our emotions is important for 2 reasons. Expressing our emotions is important both because it's important to be able to communicate to others how we're feeling, and it's also important for us to be able to put our emotions into words. They feel much safer, they feel much calmer, they feel much more less large and all over the place when we could concretize them and make them tangible and express exactly what it is that we're feeling. And most importantly, accepting those emotions. Accepting those emotions is a big one. Most often, I sit with teens and hear them say to me, I shouldn't have felt that way. I was oversensitive. I know I should be more positive. I wish I wouldn't feel so sad all the time. First thing I work on with teens is accepting those emotions. If you're able to accept emotions, emotions go to a much healthier place. And they also tell you a lot about who you are and what you feel and about accepting all parts of you. I try to teach teens that good people can have bad feelings sometimes. I try to teach teens that painful emotions shouldn't be ignored, that it's not weak to share feelings, and that painful emotions are not a result of a bad attitude. In my home, I wanted to really work on emotional awareness. So I put up this big sign. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. How are you doing today? How are you feeling today? The caricatures, the cartoons. I put up that in my kitchen thinking, oh, wow, I'm going to get my kids to be really emotionally aware. So that worked for a while until it backfired on me while I'm on an important phone call. And one of my children take a stick and take a pencil or something that they had handy, pointed to ignored, neglected, abandoned, and furious. And I was like, okay, I think I got the point. But yes, so how can you as a mom really work on getting emotional awareness into your home so that your child can know her feelings, identify them, and respond to them best? Validate feelings, whatever they may be. Show your child that feelings and behavior are 2 totally different things. Feelings are always okay. All feelings that your child may experience are always okay. And when you validate those feelings and give them space, they don't get more unhealthy. They get more safe, more comfortable, less dangerous. And we have to differentiate between feelings and behavior. We can always say all feelings are okay, and what we do with them might be a problem, and that we have to talk about. But all feelings are okay. Whenever you can in your home, use an emotional vocabulary as often as possible. Instead of saying, it's great that we're all at dinner together, how about, I'm really happy that we're at dinner together? Or, you have to go upstairs now because I'm really overwhelmed. As much as you can, add in as much emotional vocabulary as possible. And be honest with your teen when you're feeling intense. Be honest so that they can see that you're not embarrassed or not uncomfortable or not upset. Nothing wrong with admitting to the great emotional intensity. What greater gift can you give your child to model this? Um, just to bring this example home, don't you all have had this experience with two of your children who are fighting and one of them says, I'm going to kill you? I know I do in my home. I'm going to kill you. Now, what is our typical response? Our typical response is, no, you didn't mean that. You don't mean that you really want to kill your brother. Come on, you might be upset at your brother, but you don't mean you really want to kill your brother. Now, what happens to the child who said that? Yes, I do want to kill my brother. I actually do. I actually want him to not exist anymore. And he escalates his feelings of anger. What happens when you tell that child, you are really, really angry at your brother? I hear that you're really angry at your brother. All of a sudden, the child calms down. And the child, when you give space to a feeling, that is the best way to keep the feeling safe. And that is the best way to teach somebody that whatever we feel, that's okay. So moving on to our next skill, which is so, so important. I think I might spend so much of my time with teens or with children and adults that I work with too on perspective taking. What is perspective taking? What is the concept of perspective taking? The perspective taking is that two people in a relationship, in any dynamic between two people, both individuals have a very different perspective about everything, about what may have happened, about their feelings, about their viewpoints. It's a skill for your child to understand, just as you see in the little cartoon there, this elephant, and every person has a different perspective about what the different parts are depending on where they are and what part of the elephant they're looking at. And that's of course true. We all come from our own histories and our own viewpoints, our own intelligences, and our own various factors that make us look at situations a certain way. First thing, the teens have got to understand that really everybody does look at things through different perspectives, and there really isn't only one truth in situations. So I try to show this to teens by showing them optical illusions. This brings the point home to teens. I try to show them, look at this, and they say right away, and I say, what do you see here? We have all different kinds of optical illusions that I pull out. And we will just argue about what is this? I think it's a duck, and I think it's a rabbit, and all those typical optical illusions. And it brings the point home to them that really people look at things differently. How far and what a skill it is to know that first, the first ground rule is that everybody looks at things differently. And in that case, if everybody looks at things differently, then I have to start a learning process with the person that I'm in a relationship with. And my learning process is about trying to understand how they see things. So the first thing I need to do is stop what the teen's favorite thing is, which I call being mind readers, making assumptions. The first thing we have to do is stop looking at things only through our eyeglasses. When we make assumptions, we could sometimes jump to conclusions or be really harsh with our predictions. And sometimes that may not be what it's all about. You know, we've all been in situations where somebody's rushed past us just because, and it looked like they were just being rude and just didn't take a minute to say hello to us. And it's possible that sometimes they didn't see and they were just rushing and they were one-minded. So I want you to be able to validate for your daughter her feelings and not to be able to say, well, that maybe didn't happen. And we should always give the benefit of the doubt, because when you're trying to get her to dialogue, that will be very upsetting to her. She will want to hear that her perspective is also very valid. So while you are going to be telling her that somebody else has a totally different perspective, you want to be successful with your teen by first telling her, and your perspective is really important and really valid too. And we also need to know that somebody else might have looked at this from a whole different perspective. And we're really, really a lot of steps ahead if we can stop saying, well, this is what happened, instead of saying, this is how I saw it. How can you model it in your home? That little elephant icon is, again, the modeling icon. How can you model it in your home? You can point out the different ways you and your daughter look at situations at home. You can point out, look at this situation that happened. Isn't it interesting how you looked at it this way and I looked at it this way? I often do this with my husband. We come into a room, some perspective taking, and I say, doesn't this room look very neat? Does this room look neat to you? He's the organized one, and I'm the one who is creative all over the place. And so I say to him, let's do a little exercise. And I was very curious. How does this room look to you? And he's like, messy. And I'm like, really? I'm being honest with you. This room looks really neat to me. And that was just brought home how important perspective taking is. You can also, so you can point out the different ways you and your daughter look at situations, and you can also teach her that we move from assuming to knowing. And the way we move from assuming to knowing is just ask. Let's ask. I assumed you were really mad at me because I was late to pick you up from practice. Is that what's going on? Oh no, Mom. We don't have to continue. That doesn't have to snowball into a fight, into a whole argument. But no, I have to tell you, Mom, the truth is something happened at practice. Oh, thank you. That helps me understand what's going on. So perspective taking is really, really important. Moving on to our next skill, which is really another important one, is assertiveness. Assertiveness is teaching your daughter the difference between passive, aggressive, and assertive behavior. This helps your daughter maintain personal boundaries. What do I mean by that? Passive behavior, let's define each one of these. Passive behavior is behavior that somebody doesn't feel comfortable. Your teen doesn't feel comfortable to tell anybody what's really bothering her. Somebody borrows her notes in school and never returns them, and only returns them the night before the exam. And they are rumpled and doesn't return them in time. But I don't feel like saying anything. I'm really mad, and this has happened time and time again, but I don't feel like saying anything. So you know what? I'm just gonna let it go and be really annoyed and either come home and let it all out, or be really, really annoyed and upset and let it out on someone else. Then we have the other extreme, which is aggressive behavior. Somebody borrows your notes and they give it back to you crumpled and not good. And what do? You know, you're obnoxious. You're such a slob. You know, I wish you would hand things back to me the way I want them. We all know people like this in our life. They're intimidating. They're unpleasant to be around. You don't want this to be modeled for your daughter. You want your daughter to know that there doesn't have to be extremes. She doesn't have to be passive, where she represses her emotions. She doesn't have to be aggressive, where her emotions explode. There is a medium. There is a place where she can be, which is called assertive. Look at the little icon on the PowerPoint. There's your needs, which is the aggressive behavior. I will get my needs met at whatever cost. And again, you may be happy, or your daughter may be happy that she's getting her needs met, but those of the people who live around her might not be so comfortable. And then there's everybody else, the other extreme, where everybody else's needs are being met, and that's the passive person. And then we have the middle, assertive. How can I meet my own needs and meet your needs as well? So let's take that example. Let's take that example of the borrowing notes. I teach a little acronym to my teens, and I help them learn to be assertive with an acronym, because they always like those little acronyms, and it's easy. Once we practice it, they remember it. And I've got this ABC. So how do we do that? ABC is A, aware. The first thing you do before being assertive and trying to get your needs met is you mention that you're aware of the other person's feelings. I know you really want to borrow my notes. B, but here's what's bothering me. B is for bother, but I can't get my notes back right before the test, and I can't get them back when they're all crumpled, because then it's hard for me to use them and get all my use out of them. And then C is the conclusion. So what am I asking? What's the conclusion? So I'd be happy to lend you my notes if you would be able to give them back to me on time and give them back to me neatly. You see how she was kind, respectful, but at the same time, she didn't ignore the fact that she needs those notes and that those notes need to be kept in a certain order. So again, A, B, C, I'm aware of your feelings. B, here's what's bothering me. C, here's the conclusion of what I'm asking of you. Online and social media, talking about perspective taking that we were talking about before, we know how much more complicated understanding and seeing what people mean can be online. With the explosion of social media, text messaging, and instant messaging, it just gets so much more complicated. Complicated doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. It just means that this is the reality in the world that your daughter finds herself in. And it adds another layer of complexity to the communication that used to not exist. It used to only be face to face. Now your daughter's got a whole nother world to navigate where there are pluses and minuses in that world. So the reality that your daughter finds herself in has a new set of rules, and we need to be able to be mindful of that. So perspective taking is hard online, being able, because you don't see people's face and you don't see their tone. Coming back to what our point at hand, assertiveness, sometimes people feel that they can be more honest and say some more hurtful things online. I would call that a little bit passive aggressive. Passive aggressive is I don't really want to own up to everything I'm going to say, so I'm not going to say it to you face to face. I'm not talking about a situation where it's more comfortable sometimes to write a letter. I'm all for that. I'm talking about saying some nasty things and being able to do that online because you're not face to face. I would call that a little passive aggressive, right? I don't want to own up to what I'm doing here. So I'm going to do it in a way that I won't have to take full responsibility for it. So again, the point of assertiveness is to make sure that your daughter's needs are met and at the same time others' needs are met. How can you model this at home? You yourself can model assertive behavior. You can be honest about the next event that somebody asks you to chair, and you can say, I'd really love to, but I just don't have enough time in my schedule. Look how your needs and the others' needs were met, even if the others' needs weren't completely met, but you still maintained respect. You could also play your inner thoughts aloud when you're deliberating on a decision. Like you're deciding if you should do something, and you say, it's really bothering me that this person keeps, bringing her kids over without telling me first. What should I do? I don't want to be rude and tell her not to bring her kids over on Sunday afternoon, but at the same time, it's a little difficult for me that she's just bringing her kids over. A, B, C. I really love having your kids around, and I love our friendship. But it's a problem for me when the kids come without you letting me know first. So I'm wondering if you can possibly give me a call before. That would be our assertiveness. Moving on to our next skill is resilience. Resilience is knowing that feelings are like waves. Resilience is being able to bounce back and tolerate discomfort, being able to bounce back when things have been difficult, being able to tolerate that sometimes things are hard. And the goal is not always to eliminate discomfort. So what do I mean by feelings are like waves? Feelings are like waves. When we feel so intense, and imagine a wave. The top of the wave is when your child and when your teen comes home and something is really bothering her and she feels just so intense. And we tell them, we know you feel intense, and we can think about what the best thing to do with that intensity is. But know that feelings also go down, and you won't always feel like this. And there's not always an absolute solution. I'm all for advocating. I'm all for advocating and helping your child. But sometimes understanding that you cannot, as I said, eliminate all discomfort is really, really important. And knowing that sometimes resilience, going through uncomfortable situations, is very helpful. It teaches us to new skills. Think about an obstacle course. An obstacle course has many obstacles, right? And I sometimes tell teens, imagine somebody not having ever seen an obstacle course before, and they see an obstacle course in front of them. And then they bump into the first obstacle and they start to kick it. Why is this here? What's going on? What do I need this for? Imagine looking at those, knowing what those obstacles are there. You're supposed to learn a new skill. You need to learn to jump. You need to learn to skip. You need to learn to do whatever kinds of moves. And then when you learn those things, you have grown. You have learned, in the case of the obstacle course, some physical things. But we're talking about when they have to face bumps, they're going to be learning some really, really important things. So that can help them be resilient while they're going through it, knowing that this is going to be helpful to me for my future. Sometimes in terms of resilience and helping them not break right away, I talk to teens about delaying responding. You're on text, chat, or emails, and you trigger someone something said, trigger a really, really negative response. I have a little CFOV acronym up there, and I took that from Rachel Simmons, famous teen educator, and she calls that the crazy freak out voice. That stands for the crazy freak out voice. What's the crazy freak out voice? The crazy freak out voice is right when something happens, I'm immediately about to respond and say, well, if you feel that way, then this relationship is over. I'm talking about resilience, being able to hold still. Now remember, that really connects to some of that emotional awareness that we discussed in that first skill. I'm feeling really sad right now. I'm feeling lonely and hurt. I'm feeling like my friends rejected me. What do I best need to handle those feelings right now? And if I could handle those emotions right now, I have more ability to be resilient and not respond back to something that might cause some negative things. So I would say delay responding. And know that in difficult conversations and in new skills that we learn, we have to keep trying. We have to be resilient in the sense not to break right away and say, oh, I tried it. I often have teens in my office who say to me, Brachi, I tried it. It didn't work. I said, so how many times did you try it? Oh, once. I said, well, we've been practicing this skill for 3 weeks, so maybe we can give it more than one time. So I teach them that that is something that they can keep at and get better at. Accepting what cannot change. Again, we cannot always eliminate discomfort. Accepting sometimes what cannot change. Moving on, taking personal responsibility is a big one. I try to teach teens that in most fights, and again, I'm going to preface this, in most conflicts, not in conflicts that have to do with a bullying situations where there's a perpetrator and a victim, I would not apply what I'm saying right now. But in most conflicts, I see most conflicts are not the case where there's a clear bully and there's a clear perpetrator and a clear victim. So most of the time, there's a contribution that everybody played to that. Everybody put in a piece of what they did to make the situation to where it is today. And I like to teach teens and teach kids. What is it that you think you contributed? Now again, remember, if you're going to print out my simple hints for dialogue with teens, that's on the bottom, and I hope you do, it's going to go through some things to stay away from when you dialogue with teens, and it's going to also take you through some things that work very well. One of the things it's going to say to you is timing, 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 timing. If your child comes home and is highly intense and your teen wants to talk to you, and then you say, well, what's your contribution? That would be not such good timing. Your teen wants to vent. Your teen wants to just tell you the problem and wants you to just hear, listen, and just reflect her feelings. What does it mean to reflect her feelings? Just to say, am I getting it right? Were you feeling really like left out? What is it that was going on for you? Often she doesn't want you to bring these things up, but a little later, bring it and sprinkle it through the culture of your home. Say it to siblings when siblings are fighting. I'm sure that doesn't happen to any of you. It doesn't happen in my house. But when you have some constant sibling fights, sibling conflicts, what can you say? Can you say to them, well, what did you do to contribute? Can you each take a piece that you did to contribute? Problem is, I find sometimes the teens that I work with have trouble taking personal responsibility. And I think that's because I have to go back with them and teach them that mistakes are not catastrophic. I can admit when I make a mistake. I can admit it. Mistakes are not so bad. I can still be okay and make a mistake and have done something wrong. Let's put that into the culture of our families, of our schools, and of our communities, that it's okay that we made a mistake. And then maybe we can avoid some of that denial that I see, some of that denial that the teens come into my office crying about, some of the denial that is, I didn't do it. We weren't rude. We just only sat at our table with only our friends. I mean, what's so rude about that? And, so some of that denial where no one wants to take personal responsibility. And again, if you're going to train your teen and you're trained in your family language, the idea of like, well, what was your contribution? Mistakes are not catastrophic. It's okay if you made a mistake. What is your contribution to this story here? And then maybe there doesn't have to be so much denial because there's not so much at stake. My favorite, again, taken from Rachel Simmons, teen educator. No offense and just kidding. She calls it a get out of jail free card. I can say whatever I want, but if I said just kidding, then it's okay. Or if I say no offense, now you know when somebody says no offense, right? That information that's going to come at you is going to be very offensive, because why else are they saying no offense? But I find the teens use no offense and just kidding to get themselves off the hook. I can say, like, your thighs are kind of thick, and then someone could say, how can you say that? And they could say, I was just kidding. And now we're going to turn the tables. I was just kidding. And if you get upset about what I said, you're over exaggerating. You're being overly sensitive. So I really, really try to call teens on that. Just kidding and no offense are they're hurtful, and they're not, as Rachel Simmons says, a get out of jail free card. And again, they're just as hurtful online as they are offline. That brings us to the last part of our taking personal responsibility, which is apologizing. Let's teach our teens and let's model in our families apologizing, that we want you to be able to own up to your contribution in a conflict or in a story. But we don't want to force people to apologize. When we force teens or children to apologize, then we're basically telling them to say the words and not mean what's behind them. So we want to teach in our families the concept that apology means sincere apology. Apology, again, we teach them not to ruin an apology with an excuse. They can explain themselves, but if they're excusing themselves, the apology doesn't just seem as genuine or as real or isn't as effective. I sometimes call kids or teens on the casual apology, like I can do what I want and then just say, I'm sorry. So we teach teens, what is an apology? A sincere apology is, I am taking responsibility for something I did, and I am hoping not to do that again. That's a sincere apology. Moving on in our skills to a famous conflict resolution. Let's help our daughters think critically about relationships and think critically about how to solve them. So what do I mean about think critically about relationships? Let's help our daughter when they're in conflict a lot in a certain relationship, or they have a certain negative feeling all the time in a certain relationship. Let's help our daughters ask very important questions, some critical thinking skills that they're going to develop by asking some very important questions before they go about resolving the conflict. Let's see, sweetie, what is your goal? Do you want this person to just leave you alone? Or do you want to continue a relationship with them? Or do you want to be able to be honest with this person? What is your goal right now? Before you go into how you're going to go to the next step, let's ask them, what is your goal? What is your goal? And let's weigh the pros and cons of this relationship. And then let's figure out what our next step is. Are there more positives in this relationship, or are there more negatives in this relationship? Before we get into conflict resolution, which is resolving conflicts between two people who are in conflict, they need to resolve it. You want your daughter to be able to handle this independently. You don't want to be getting involved and being what the famous helicopter mom is. Now, again, I'm all for supporting your child and helping them, strategizing with her, and then affirming that she has the strength to carry it out. You're best off not getting involved as much as possible. Of course, if you see harmful or physically or emotionally harmful behavior, it is our responsibility to be an advocate for our child. But in the typical social dilemmas and social drama that you see, you're best off staying behind the scenes and letting her fight her own battles. But you're still there. You're in her head. You're the voice she's hearing if she's letting you hear it. And if she's not letting your voice and you have these discussions, it's okay. You'll model it for her, and that will be very, very valuable too. Before we aim to give our daughters skills to resolve conflict, let's talk to her about some really important things. Check the timing. Is this a good time to talk to Lisa? Is this a good time to talk to Karen? Is this a good time to talk to Deborah? Is this a good timing? And it's not about proving that you're right. Remember, let's get back to perspective taking. You're going to see one side of the story, she's going to see the other. Most often, it's not guilty and innocent, perpetrator and victim. Most often, it's just about the way some things unfolded. So, go into the conflict resolution, go into resolving the conflict thinking, I'm here to solve a problem. I'm not here to prove I'm right. We all know as adults how hard it is to do that. Again, you can model this for your child, but I think even telling it to your child is important too. Help your child understand that if she is going to be resolving conflict and she thinks the person who she's dealing with is really obnoxious, best off her not using character attacks. Best off her being really open about her feelings and not using character attacks to get involved in to get the conversation going, or at any point in the conversation. Giving the other person a chance to talk is so important. Giving the other person a chance to talk. We all know Stephen Covey, or some of us are familiar with Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, the famous 7 habits of highly effective people. The 7 habits, I teach these habits to teens to help them to help them develop personal leadership. And one of the habits is seek first to understand and then be understood. Hard for a teen or for an adult to do. We always want to say our point first. Stephen Covey maintains that if we can let the other person talk and show them how understood they are, we're more likely to be able to be understood ourselves. And I think it's true. Help your daughter understand that if she uses extreme language while she's trying to resolve the conflict, that will probably be distracting and not helpful. For example, you always are obnoxious. You always leave me out at the lunch table. You never include me in your ice skating trips. You never, all of that always and never is distracting, because what is your teen going to say? What is the other teen going to say? The other teen's going to say, that's not true. I don't always. They're going to be bent on they're going to get stuck on the always and the never. And we all know that most things don't happen always or never. So we try to avoid that extreme language. Now, those are all the prerequisites. I have a little acronym that I use with teens. There's a basic template before I go into my little acronym that you see on the PowerPoint up there, but there's a basic template, which is, how do I resolve how do I problem solve? How do I problem solve? How do I problem solve? I sit and say, or you let the other person first talk, and you follow Stephen Covey's advice, but what is the problem? Here's what the problem is for me, and here's how I'm seeing it. And we really have to make sure that we're really listening and hearing what is the problem, what is going on. And then the other person said, well, here's the problem for me. So then you come together and you define the problem. So it seems like this is the problem. And then you come up with a few solutions that will help solve the problem together. That is the simplest way to go about resolving conflict. I'm sure you've seen this in your home with siblings. You know, you want more computer time and you think he's constantly taking the computer. And I think I never use the computer and I never get enough time. So we take everybody's perspectives. Remember our perspective taking. They're each going to look at it in very different ways. And then what we do is try to brainstorm some solutions, and we help the children or the teens come up with some solutions. So that's for problem solving. Now here's my little acronym that I use with teens. And again, they love acronyms because once we practice it a few times, they can have it in their head. And when they're under pressure or feeling anxious in a relationship, they can just access that little acronym and it's helpful to them. So here's when you actually have to resolve a conflict. When you, the teen, again, have to come and sort of talk something out with another person. So here's how you do it. R stands for relationship. Relationship is I affirm the relationship. Affirm the relationship, meaning I show how important it is to me, the relationship is to me. I is for I statements, and we'll go through this to make sure you get it. I statements. I statements are talking about focusing on your feelings and how you're experiencing the behavior or whatever happened, as opposed to focusing on the other person. I statements are so important in any dialogue, in any conversation, any conflict resolution, right? I often role play with teens in my office, and I say, what if someone says, you're always taking much too much of my time, right? how does that person feel? You. I mean, you see my movements and my facial expressions and my hands moving. You feels like you're attacking me. The person on the other end doesn't have even time to think about the behavior. What are they thinking? Oh no, I must protect myself. I'm in trouble. I must protect myself. So we move away from attacking with you statements and we focus on I statements. I statements are, let's talk about how I'm feeling. I'm focusing on me. And that's actually very helpful because the other person can't really argue with you about that. You're just saying how you feel. And here's how we do it. I feel, and then we put in the emotion. I feel sad. I feel embarrassed. I feel lonely. I feel left out. I feel overwhelmed. When blank. I feel overwhelmed when you leave me in the house without any help. I feel sad when I'm left on the lunch table by myself. When I feel sad when I'm the only one not invited to a party. I feel whatever it is. You can help your teen find language that's comfortable for them. I do that in my office. Sometimes the teens will say, nobody talks like that. And I say, okay, you're right. Let's find more comfortable language for you, but let's keep the focus in mind that we're focusing on I statements. I've had some teens role playing with me and kind of missing the boat or, trying to get their goal in, and they'd say, okay, here we go, Brachi. Let me role play how I'm going to tell my friend tomorrow. I feel like you're an idiot. And I'm like, okay, that was not an I statement. I focuses on your feelings, and we say, I feel, put the emotion in when blank and blank happens. So again, we avoid character attacks. And then S, say your contribution. And E, enter into an agreement or a problem or a solution. So let's talk about this again. Let's give an example, okay? We have a girl named Deborah, okay? The girl named Deborah likes to sit with a girl named Lisa. Now, Karen is another person in the picture. Karen always used to sit with Deborah. She doesn't like it to sit with Karen, Deborah, and Lisa. She wants it to be Karen and Deborah. She doesn't want Lisa in the picture. So she's been very obviously pulling Lisa, making it very, very clear to Lisa and to Deborah that she doesn't want Lisa in the picture. After a few days, Deborah's feeling really overwhelmed. I don't like this. This goes against my personal values. I don't like it that Lisa's feeling excluded. So after a few days, she goes up to Karen and says, our relationship, our friendship is really important to me. And I feel really uncomfortable when we're leaving someone out at the lunch table. S, I probably should have told you earlier and not let this unfold for a few days so that we're now in a fight. E, can I ask you to please not publicly say that Lisa shouldn't sit with us? Or can I ask you that we should please have our own private time at home, and when it comes to the lunch table, are we able to just sit together? Or can we just have it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday where we all sit together, and I'll make sure on Thursdays and Fridays that I sit together with you somehow? Again, the relationship is important to me, but here's what's bothering me. Here's what I need. S, say your contribution, and E, enter into an agreement. My guess for the modeling part, you have plenty of opportunities to actually practice this skill with your daughter in the conflicts that you inevitably will have with your daughter, just because that's usually what happens in adolescence. Moving on. Help your daughter develop a sense of self. Help your daughter know herself. Help your daughter know what are her strengths, what are her challenges or weaknesses. Help your daughter accept that she does have challenges and weaknesses, and she has great strengths too, and challenges and weaknesses don't make her more flawed or broken. That's just the way we are. Help her learn to love herself, identifying what's great about me. What are my talents? What are my hobbies? What are all the emotions that I'm feeling that make me me? I'm maybe a sensitive type, and sometimes I feel emotions really intensely. I'm maybe somebody who needs to learn a little bit more about how my behavior comes across to other people. She will gain a lot of confidence when she sees that she has the skills to survive the social dilemmas that come up, and realizes that these skills are a building block for helping her through this process that we discussed in the beginning. Am I a child or am I an adult? I'm put into this world now of peer relationships, of social dilemmas, of sometimes a lot of aggression in the peer world, where we can't name some of that aggression because some of it happens so subtly, we all know. And we've been there. Adult women have told me that they remember those moments of when in adolescence, when they were hurt. And so help your daughter know that this is a hard time and it's not always about her, um, and that she help her become the best her she can become by knowing her strengths and challenges, accepting all of her emotions and all the intensity, and helping her build confidence when she sees she has the skills to survive. Um, Gina, how much time do we have?
I think it's up to you.
What are we up to now?
It's 9:20, so.
Okay, so we have a little time. So what?
Are you finished? You want to do
Let's go into some simple hints for dialogue with teens. Our whole discussion tonight was on the premise that maybe you'll be able to dialogue with your teen, hopefully. And we then also understood that maybe you won't, and then you're going to model. These are all some great, great skills that you can have to give over your teens. So some simple hints for dialogue with teens. Simple, simple. We can have a whole lecture on just this slide. Listen, listen, listen. Affirm and empathize with her feelings. What does it mean to affirm? Affirm, I understand. You sound like you're feeling really sad. You sound like you're feeling really upset. That sounds like it was just really difficult. You're empathizing with her feelings. And then reflecting her feelings to check if you got it right. Am I getting it right? Are you saying that you were just feeling so left out or so overwhelmed or so misunderstood? And you're checking if you got it right. Again, you're not assuming anything because we're not mind readers. You can share your own adolescent experiences. That's so, so helpful. You could look for, this is so important. This one is key. Look for opportunities to bond without an agenda. Let it be that when you come to talk to your teen, it's not always about we're talking, we're having a serious talk, but look for opportunities to bond without an agenda. That way, dialogue will come more easily and freely. And by the way, when I say dialogue, I mean connection and bonding. It doesn't always have to be with actual dialogue. Sometimes cuddling up, cozying on the couch, and both reading near each other is a way to connect. Always wait and think until things are calm to strategize solutions. All the skills that I have presented that may bring up some solutions or some things you can teach your daughter or help her navigate, always with waiting until things are calm. First, she just wants to vent. Just listen. When I ask teens to tell me what's most helpful to you before I did this talk, I asked some teens, hey, I'm giving a talk. Tell me what's most helpful to you that your parents can do, and tell me what's most unhelpful. So they said, most of them said, really unhelpful when my people pry into our business when we don't want them to. So there's the look for opportunities to bond without an agenda. Let it be that it's normal to dialogue with your teen and that you also respect when she needs her space. Wait until things are calm. Ask her what she needs from you. Do you just want to vent or do you want some ideas? Sometimes they just want to vent. A lot of the teens that I asked this question, what's helpful that parents can do? A lot of them answered and said, just listen. Just listen and let us vent and don't solutionize. Sometimes they do want solutions. Turn your home into a sanctuary, a shelter where she can get the unconditional love she gets nowhere else. That will help her want to dialogue with you, want to keep you connected and involved in her world. And some things to stay away from. Common mistakes in dialogue with teens, minimizing the difficulty of the situation. You're being oversensitive. There's no such thing as oversensitive. There may be some things about how can we behave when we feel sensitive to be most effective. But I always call, girls on this and teens, and I say there's no such thing as oversensitive. Sometimes, again, your reaction might not be very effective for your environment, but the fact that you're feeling it is because it's your feelings, and that is really valid. Another minimizing conversation, another minimizing phrase. Girls will be girls. That's just, that's not helping them understand the reality of navigating the social drama that exists. That's not that. That's girls will be girls. Like, it's okay. This just happens. Just get with the program. This is what happens. This is what you need to expect. Everyone will forget tomorrow. Mom, there is no tomorrow. What do you mean everyone will forget tomorrow? She didn't mean it. Again, as much as I've spoken to you about perspective taking, and it's possible that the other person didn't mean it. We're talking about now about dialogue, getting dialogue going. She doesn't want to hear that. At another point, you could say, I wonder what was going on for her after she finishes discussing it with you when she feels intense. Criticizing your daughter or taking the other person's side. That your teens tell me that they don't want that. They don't want that when they're feeling highly intense and start a dialogue with their parents. You can, again, help them perspective take and help them see another side of the situation. But criticizing them always makes them shut down, and dialogue's about opening up and sharing more and connecting more. How about the truth cop, my favorite one, the truth cop. I'm here to find out if the facts that you present today are really the facts that actually occurred. And I'm here to make sure they actually occurred. How could it be? How could it be? I mean, she wasn't there today in school. I mean, yesterday you told me a different story. How could it be? They don't want to feel interrogated. We'll deal with the facts later. Maybe sometimes the facts don't seem to make so much sense. But okay, we're trying to create dialogue. Let's hear first what she wants to say, and then we'll figure out the facts after. Becoming hysterical on behalf of your daughter is not helpful to her. Again, your emotions are valid too. Give yourself some time to tend to your emotions with whoever that might be helpful to do that with. But becoming hysterical and then intervening in your daughter's dilemmas sometimes can cause a lot of chaos and a lot of pieces to pick up. How about demonizing the friend she's at odds with? Oh, I've always hated her anyway. Well, really, Mom? Because I kind of hoped, even though I was saying these awful things about her, that tomorrow maybe we'll be friends again. So, demonizing that friend, and also the concept of having to demonize someone so that your child can be right is sometimes not very effective. And again, in bold and in capital, I wrote prying when she doesn't want to share. She doesn't want to share. And when she doesn't want to share, prying seems like you're invading her world. And that's something very difficult for her. So there's a lot more that we can talk about on these topics. This is just a small overview. But some of these skills that I've talked about, my parting message to you, parents, caregivers, I talked about a bunch of different skills, but let's take critical thinking, taking personal responsibility, and resilience to give you a message that you can part with. We were trying to develop these skills, understand what these skills are all about, and help develop them in my child. So now, here's how I think you can develop these skills in being helpful to your child, in helping her navigate social dilemmas. Critical thinking. You can ask yourself the same way you want to develop in your child critical thinking, to ask, what is it that I want in the relationship right now? How am I going to get there? What's my goal? We spoke about that when we spoke about conflict resolution. Now you want to ask yourself, how can I be most helpful to my daughter now and in the future? Should I bring someone else into the picture? Do I need some professional advice? Do I need some professional guidance? We don't have to wait for a crisis. Even if we just need some advice, like when we're learning math, we don't have to have a problem with math in order to need a math teacher. We don't necessarily have to have a problem with adolescence in order to need an expert to help us, who's an expert in this complex developmental stage of adolescence. It doesn't have to wait until it's a crisis. It can always be helpful to have somebody help get involved in helping us understand, whether it's the skills that I've talked about tonight or a difficult situation that you're navigating with your child. Taking personal responsibility, we're trying to teach our daughters to take personal responsibility. So we can't take personal responsibility for her issues. It's her issue, so it makes sense for you to stay in the background while giving her support, letting her own the problem. She needs to receive the message that she's the one who needs to be taken care of. Don't let her feel like you're in terrible pain. Of course you are, but you're in pain for her. Let her see that she is the focus, not you. Maybe this triggers some emotions. There's a little picture on the side, I'm not sure it's so visible, but it says emotional baggage on that little handbag. We all have some relationships in our past that trigger some things when our daughter is going through things, and we want to make sure that we can separate some of that. Of course, we can use any helpful advice or experiences that we've gone through to help guide our daughter. We want to make sure that they're not triggering emotions that are impeding on us being as effective and helpful to our daughters. And we don't want to lose focus in the intensity of the pain. And we know resilience, sometimes it's hard to manage, sometimes it's hard to tolerate the discomfort of watching your child in pain or watching your child navigate social dilemmas, but we know that when your child manages it, this is going to help her for her future. This time period is difficult, but it is a time period that will help her to be more successful, if navigated properly, to be more successful in her adult relationships in the future. So thank you so much for listening. And I hope you enjoyed. I have a teen daughter too, so I'm in this with you too, and I hope some of these skills can be helpful to you.
You're gonna take questions in a minute.
And I'll take questions in a minute.
Okay. All right. Okay, hi everyone. I'm just gonna open up the chat box, and I'm gonna give you all a minute to sign out and then sign in with a different name, or whatever you feel most comfortable doing to maintain your confidentiality. Okay, let me just so I'm gonna get the chat box up. Okay, you could start asking your questions. 1 second. Okay. I'm giving this back up. So people are going to ask questions in here, and then you could just answer. You could answer. Yeah, you could just use your voice.
No, not at all. Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate your vote of confidence. Any other questions? I see someone typing a question. It says multiple attendees are typing. I guess multiple attendees questions. What was the ABS for again? Did you mean the ABC? The ABC was an acronym for assertiveness. I think you mean the ABC. We spoke about assertive behavior, and we spoke about our children sometimes only having two tools of having either they can be passive where they repress feelings, or they can be aggressive where they are explosive and let feelings out. So we spoke about an acronym ABC of how you can help your child be assertive. A is, I'm aware of your feelings. She says to her peer or her whoever it is, or her sibling, I'm aware of your feelings. B, here's what's bothering me. C, here's the conclusion. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Shoshana. Thank you. Good question. Really good question, Alyssa. Her question is, how can we help with the resilience? What can we do to be supportive but not rescue? Really good question. I think that firstly, knowing that intensity, like I said, I gave you that kind of visual image of that wave, and knowing that you right now feel like you're on top of the wave and it will go down, but helping your daughter identify what she needs to do to help her get through the time period. What is it that you need to do? Do you need to be distracted right now? Do you need to go upstairs to your room to listen to some music? Do you need to go away from the situation? What do you need in school? Let's help navigate her day to help her feel like there's enough going on in her day and there's a person in the school to be helpful to her. And once she sees that she can use her again identifying emotions and seeing how can I best respond to them, she can learn that she can be able to get through some of these tough situations. Oh, CFOV. CFOV is the crazy freakout voice. The crazy freakout voice. That is, again, that was under resilience. The crazy freakout voice is right away when I hear something, I can't wait. I can't wait to respond. I can't deal with the discomfort that I'm feeling. So I need to respond really, really, really quickly. And I can't even wait until the next day or until I am calming down. And I'm talking about resilience, being able to tolerate that discomfort for a little while. Thank you, Huba and Hoodie. I see people still typing. Thank you, Jill. I'm going to start wrapping it up now. Thank you so much for joining us. And wait till you finish typing. Thank you, Malky. Somebody asked me a question if I talk to teen girls with blended family issues. Yes, and I can talk with you more about that. There's probably one of the slides here um, with my number, and there are people at our practice at A+ that can speak to that as well. So if you go to the little Word PDF, it has our practice's number, and there's a few clinicians who can be very helpful with that. Thank you, Hadassah. I still see some people typing before we wrap up. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. It's interesting that I see the teens do love that ABC. For some reason, they love it. They get into it, and it's helpful, both in groups that I've run and in one-on-one with kids. I think, Shoshana, I think that's great. I think that you're modeling for them real authenticity. You're modeling for them. Now, again, sometimes when a teen wants to talk, it's always at the most inconvenient times, I find. Parents tell me that a lot, and I find that with my teen as well. So I do think that you might want to take that opportunity if it doesn't happen so much, but certainly, Shoshana, to show the teen that you're being really real is to give them the best skills for being able to be real themselves about what they're feeling and what they need. I think that's great. And again, I would make sure that I say, like, it's really important to me to hear what's going on for you. But right now, I just need a couple of minutes and I'll be back. And again, I would jump at the opportunity if the teen doesn't usually want to talk. And if she wants to talk, I would do whatever I can to actually respond to her. But if it's happening a lot, I would definitely, I think that's excellent to be able to model that for her. Thank you, Fabi. I think we're going to wrap up now. Thank you again for joining us. And thank you again to A+ for helping facilitate this. So have an excellent night, everybody. Bye-bye.